It started with one question around a fire pit in Tanzania. What challenges are you still facing? I was unexpectedly blown away by what the students shared. I was leading my first Global Impact Conference this past July, where students from India, Kenya, Brazil, and the UK came together to share how they used their stories to inspire impact projects, ranging from using musical therapy to reform treatment options in the criminal justice system, to challenging traditional systems of fundraising using community-driven storytelling. The courage, creativity, wisdom, and vulnerability of these teenagers amazed me. In comparison, I remember how naive I felt on my first trip to Tanzania when I was 19. I had fallen in love with the country after watching a documentary about Jane Goodall, and while I thought I would become a primatologist and study the chimpanzees in Gombe National Park, I quickly realized that was not in my path after my first class in biology. However, I developed a love for the country that stayed with me. I think it's the intense heat that greets you, or the salty taste of the Indian Ocean that permeates the air, or the sound of the streets coming alive just beyond the airport that feels like magic. There is a certain level of excitement that I have yet to experience anywhere else. And when I arrived, I thought I was ready. I had Googled the organization I was going to be working with. I had bought my very overpriced safari-style hat, and I had excitedly come with my printouts, which I entitled Solutions to Gender-Based Violence for Women in Africa. I was ready to help. However, that first day changed me forever. The director, who was an amazingly wise Tanzanian woman, guided us to sit back and listen. And what I saw stayed with me. I saw women holding space for each other, laughing together, crying together, and sharing strategies on how they were using their businesses to leave relationships that no longer served them. I remember feeling really embarrassed and looking at my printouts in the blue plastic folder and thinking to myself, God, I know nothing. Ever since that first day in Mwanza, where I sat back, dropped the printouts, and watched women solve their own problems, I have tried to figure out how we can stop volunteers from entering a country with pre-prescribed answers. My work now is designed around one central question. How do we disrupt a $3 billion industry where on average 1.6 million people from around the world travel to communities, oftentimes very far from their own, for the sole purpose of helping? And instead, how do we create opportunities based off of true human connection, vulnerability, and mutual exchange? Tanzania has always given me so much more than a place to just show up and help. It's been the home of my 3 children, Baraka, Coletta, and Jasiri. It's where I've gone through the beauty of 2 adoptions, and where I will never forget the moment of anticipation when both Baraka and Coletta got to come home, and the joy of seeing them grow into themselves. It's also where I gave birth to my second son, Jasiri. Home in Tanzania now is where we return once a year to connect my children to their roots. It's where my children's friends come every Saturday and take Coke bottle tops and turn them into toy cars, where my kids' heights are etched on the walls as they grow, and where recycled car part sculptures made by a local artisan greet you as you enter. Tanzania has always been our family home and the place we return to once a year to really connect my children to both their home and their roots. However, things changed dramatically in Tanzania during COVID lockdowns. It was fascinating to see what happens when all the international visitors who are here to help leave and go home. There is almost an eerie level of silence and calm. And I was in the process of finalizing my daughter Coletta's adoption and had been met with delays because of COVID. And so, from our home on the hills in Pugu, I sat and observed what was happening all around me, And what I saw and experienced completely changed the way that I viewed international volunteering. Overnight, all of the helping projects ended, and communities lost health centers and English programs. Overnight, we were forced to reimagine, or for the first time, confront the reality of how international volunteering could be better. And for me, during this time, all of my service work stopped. I was struggling to figure out how I was going to homeschool my kids on YouTube while relentless downpours pounded on our tin roof and Wi-Fi that trucked in and out made everything harder. There were days when all I wanted to do was to plop myself down underneath the shade of a mango tree and hide. But something changed for me in that moment. No longer did I pretend to have any of the answers. Instead, I shared how I was struggling and I asked for help. My two local friends, Juma and Yusufu, gently reminded me anytime I got frustrated with what felt like my lack of parenting patience, to be kind to myself and to take things pole-pole, or slowly, as they say in Kiswahili. And then there was Kim, who would organize spontaneous road trips to the beaches on the Indian Ocean anytime I worried that my failed homeschool lesson meant my kids would never catch up. Receiving support from these three amazing people totally took away any ideas I had about saving anyone and fostered a deep connection I wasn't expecting. But the idea of helping is alluring. It feels sexy. It gives us the temporary high of being significant, important, and powerful. It's like that scene in the movie where the hero rushes in to save the day, and we are given the vicarious ego rush that lets us know we are good, needed, and useful here. I felt it too, and I've seen just how hard it is to stop showing up and pretending like we have all of the answers. In a world of Zoom meetings and online conversations, the first time you step foot into a country should not be your first experience with the culture and the community there. If you think about it, how does this even make sense? We arrive at a place we've never been to before, to meet people we have no connection with, to then bring our toolbox, ready to enter someone else's home, ready to help. What makes us think that people would welcome this with open arms? However, by truly connecting with others and sharing more of ourselves, we have the possibility to go beyond the surface and the opportunity for real relationships and genuine connections, which is where true innovation and creativity lie. At our Global Impact Conference this past summer, when we asked people the question about what challenges they were still facing, one student bravely stood up and shared how her experience with anxiety, depression, and being bullied in secondary school led to the formation of a support group where other young women shared how they got through their darkest days. In another poignant moment, a woman raised her hand and shared how she had unexpectedly lost her job and how her husband had died in the same week, leaving her with a new baby and an unimaginable fear of not knowing what to do. The room got quiet, and in that moment, there was genuine mutual connection woven together by vulnerability and compassion. There was nothing simple anyone could say or do to comfort her or to solve this. Sometimes all we can do is to be there, to witness what others are going through, and to let them know they are not alone. I've come to see in the process that the aim isn't to fix anyone or to solve other people's problems, but instead to share who we really are. It's in this that we plant the seed and water the soil for sustainable growth and change through these connections and relationships. In the process of working with communities globally to pioneer projects, I encourage you to ask for help in the process more than you try to help. In an interview, Simon Sinek states, We don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it. I want to sit with this for a minute because it says so much and challenges us to see the whole experience of international volunteering differently. When working with communities globally, give others the gift of guiding you. Trust them to have their own answers. Get vulnerable. For me, this looked like asking my team in Tanzania to take the lead when navigating solo parenting and complex projects felt overwhelming in the middle of my divorce. Yet, it was through these moments of deeper connection where people really started to work together, pioneering something new. No helping was needed because oftentimes human problems are far too complex for a fast and easy solution, but an open heart was always welcomed. If you have the desire to connect with communities globally, I want you to know that it's possible to have an experience where you leave feeling a deeper sense of connection to both yourself and the community you enter. Service does not need to be one-sided and leave everyone feeling empty. And I want to offer you 3 simple ways that you can do this. 1, start by sharing your story. One of the first things I found that created much deeper connections was instead of asking, how can I help? Ask yourself, what can I share? Who am I? What have I struggled with? In my work and with the students I mentor, I have seen again and again how vulnerability and connection leads to much deeper community engagement. We connect through our common humanity. The second step is, instead of coming in as the savior with all of the answers, ready to help, share your ideas and pioneer projects together. Lean into what you don't know and ask questions. Share your uncertainties so we can find solutions together. In the context of volunteer travel globally, I know many of us are excited to put COVID behind and forget. And trust me, I completely understand wanting to leave behind these few past incredibly challenging years. However, I hope we don't forget the lessons we learned during this time so that we do not go back to designing programs for communities that are solely dependent on us coming to help. Our presence should not be required for communities to access support services, learning materials, or resources. In the process of working with communities globally, let's put direct resources into the hands of the people who are making the change to equalize who has the power in an increasingly globalized world. People do not need us to give them the answers. They need the power to make their own change without us. Lastly, I would suggest that we shift our mindset from seeing international service as a once-in-a-lifetime experience to an experience that you can take with you for the rest of your life. This can be the beginning of a lifelong journey of discovering who you are, what moves you, what makes you happy, and how you can bring your strength to a cause that you feel passionate about. I think sometimes in our desire to go to other places in pursuit of helping, we forget that the true magic happens when we are willing to be vulnerable and give others the gift of helping us. Tell me what's breaking your heart so that I can be given the gift of telling you what's breaking mine. Before we go to another community and ask, how can I help? Let's instead ask, how can we build solid relationships first so that we have the possibility to truly build something long-lasting together? I remember the final day, our last student flew back home this past summer, and I sat with Yusufu, Juma, and Kim, and we stopped and smiled. how beautiful it was that the 3 people who came to support me on one of my toughest times now got to lead others in exploring their country. We asked ourselves how we would describe this experience, and the only phrase that came to mind was Njia ya Uhuru, or pathway to freedom. Njia, meaning the journey, is also the middle name of my daughter. And in a way, the journey to finding freedom couldn't be more fitting for what happens when we decide to share who we really are with the world. So, if you are sitting here and thinking, I too want to see who I can be if I am not limited to the expectations of who the world told me to be, I urge you to go. Go to where you feel called to go and find your pathway to freedom. And go with all of your heart, because sometimes the best help of all is giving ourselves and others the gift of being seen as fully human, vulnerable, and imperfect, with no expectation of saving anyone. And just maybe in the process, we'll end up finding ourselves and helping each other. After all, thank you.